to all of you present here. We are gathered here for our annual department fest, Mazio Mustaqbil 2021. This year, our theme is Art as Resistance, and as continuation of our series of guest lectures, we are honored to have with us Ms. Rana Safvi. She'll be talking about poetry as a form of resistance in 1857, with special emphasis on a ghazal by Bahadur Shah Zafar, Gayi Yak ba Yak Hawa Palat Gayi. An Aligarh Muslim University alumni, Ma'am is a historian with a deep love for words and a passion for the culture and heritage of the Indian subcontinent. She combines her enthusiasm for both in her writing. She runs a popular blog, Hazrat Delhi, which talks about Delhi's culture, food, heritage, and age-old traditions. She is also the founder and moderator of Shire on Twitter, a forum that has revived popular interest in Urdu poetry in a major way. In addition, she is the author of Where Stones Speak, Historical Trails in Mehrauli, The First City of Delhi, The Forgotten Cities of Delhi, and Tales from the Quran and Hadith, a translator of Sayyid Ahmad Khan's Asar-e-Sanadid and Zahid Behlvi's Dastan-e-Ghadar and City of My Heart. She is also a columnist with The Hindu and Daily Oak. Now, without further delay, I would like to request ma'am to please take over.
First of all, thank you, and I congratulate the Department of History, Lady Shira, wonderful academic fest that you have organized. And I was going through your speakers, and I'm honored to be one amongst them. So, thank you once again. And the theme Mazio Mustaqbal, I think it's very, very suited for a college, and especially a history department in the college. And as Gulfisha has already mentioned, I will be talking about Bahadur Shah Ghazal, especially in light of a ghazal that he wrote, Gayi Yak ba Yak Hawa Palat. Now, before I come to that ghazal, I'd like to take you through the events of the uprising of 1857 or the first war of Indian independence, whichever way you look at it. So I'll just take you through that and then come to the ghazal. So I'd like to start with this verse. Again, it's by Bahadur Shah Zafar. दुनिया में बला से अगर आराम न पाया, हमने यही पाया कि बुरा नाम न पाया. It does not matter if we enjoyed no comforts in this world. We have at least earned this distinction that we have not been given a bad name. Now, in today's world, we all remember Bahadur Shah Zafar very fondly as being the leader of the first war of Indian independence. And I'd like to take you through his life. Abu Zafar Sirajuddin Muhammad Bahadur Shah, better known by his pen name Bahadur Shah Zafar, was the son of Akbar Shah II and his Rajput wife Lal Bai. He inherited an empire that was his only in name, as the British writ ran through it. He was their pensioner. The British resident in Delhi was responsible for everything that happened in Delhi as well as in the Lal Tilla. However, along with his empire, he also inherited the national outlook of his ancestor Akbar and father Akbar Shah II. He believed in the wisdom that all his subjects were his children, and in fact his last prayer when he left the Qila after the fall of Delhi on the night of 17 September 1857 was, Khuda, the Hindus and Muslims of India are my children. Please keep them safe and don't let them suffer for my deeds at the hands of the British. Now, this story was related by his daughter Kulsum Zamani Begum, who saw him praying on his prayer rug the night before he left. This has been included in the story Shehzadi Ki Bifta in the book Begmat Ke Aansu, which comprises eyewitness accounts recorded by Khwaja Hassan Nizami and is part of one of the books that Gulfisha mentioned, The City of My Heart. I had translated it in that. In fact, Bahadur Shah Zafar's outlook was, बुत खानों में जब गया मैं खींच कर कशका जफर, बोल उठा वो बुत, ब्राह्मण ये नहीं तो कौन है? When Zafar went to the temple with a tilak on his forehead, the idol exclaimed, if not a Brahman, then who is he? The Hindu men and women who came to bathe in the river Jamuna every morning would participate eagerly in the Jharuka Darshan when the emperor appeared before his subjects in the balcony of the Musamman Burj in the Qila every morning. Only after that would they go home and eat. And this is, I am describing not only from historical accounts, but from the Dastan-e-Qadar, which is an eyewitness account by Zahid Dehelvi, who was a courtier of Bahadur Shah, as described in Dastan-e-Qadar. And again, a book that I have translated. Bahadur Shah condemned the actions of Maulvis or any other priests who tried to divide the populace on religious lines. कहो मुल्ला से क्या हमसे रिंदों को पढ़ेगा कि हम लाहौल पढ़ के तेरी तकरीर सुनते हैं. Ask the mullah, what can he teach one so drunk in love? I hear his speeches with a disclaimer on my lips. Akbar Shah II, who started the Phool Walon Ki Sair, and it's a festival that continues even today, would offer pankhas both at the Qutub Sahib Dargah and Yog Maya temple in Mehroli. Bahadur Shah Zafar went to the extent that he would not go to the Dargah if for some reason he could not visit the temple on the previous day. The Indian society of the 19th century was living quite happily and in communal harmony, bar a few incidents here and there. When Bahadur Shah Zafar was exiled, there was a palpable sense of loss amongst the Hindus and Muslims alike. They felt as if they had lost their father. Now, these are all accounts which I have taken from Urdu sources, which were written in the late 19th and the early 20th century. One of them, of course, are translated in City of My Heart, and I'm in the process of translating a few more. On May 11th, 1857, Bahadur Shah Zafar, the nominal emperor of Hindustan, was approached by the Indian sepoys of the Bengal Army. The Bengal Army was one of the armies of the British East India Company, who came to see him from Meerut after rebelling against the British diktat that required them to use Enfield rifles whose cartridges were greased with the fat of pig and cow. The appeal to him saying that every proclamation that they had heard so far was in the name of Khilkat Khuda ki, Mulk Badshah ka, Hukum Company ka. The Lord's creation, the Emperor's country, the company's command. But now the British have been empowered to rule us by your orders. So we have come to you as petitioners, hopeful of justice. Again, this is from, these lines are from Dastan-e-Qadar. The emperor, though initially reluctant, agreed to lead them in their war against the foreign rulers, and on 12th May 1857, he was crowned the Emperor of Hindustan. On May 18th, 1857, Munshi Jeevan Lal, a spy of the British, wrote that the Rani of Ujjain, now here he is confusing because she was the Rani of Jhansi, the Rani of Ujjain, Lakshmi Bai, had asked for permission to come to court. She was told that it was entirely up to her and not required. Implicit in this report is a support for the Indian sepoys fighting under the Mughal emperor. Now the confusion is whether this is a separate Rani of Ujjain or he is mixing it with Lakshmi Bai. He was indeed accepted by all as the emperor of Hindustan, and when the uprising spread, even Lakshmi Bai of Jhansi and Nana Sahab sought legitimacy from the Mughal sovereign Bahadur Shah II rather than appealing to the notion of Hindu Padshahi or seeking legitimacy from the Maratha chiefs of Satara or Peshwa, writes Professor S.Z.H. Zahid in a special volume on Delhi in 1857. In another article, he writes, the issue of religion in 1857, 3 documents. One comes across numerous printed proclamations, appeals and pamphlets issued by the rebel leaders in the various centers of the uprising, always making a plea for the united struggle to expel the foreign rulers from the Indian subcontinent. Apart from making a very strong case for Hindu-Muslim unity, they often also sought to revive the notion of Mughal sovereignty and invoke the concept of people, Khalq of Khuda, a god, country, Mulk of king, and of the Mughal emperor, authority of the local leaders or chiefs to imply loyalty to a common cause. On 12th May 1857, when the Indian soldiers who had risen up against the British crowned Bahadur Shah Zafar as the Emperor of India, or Hindustan as it was known then, he issued the following decree. To all the Hindus and Muslims of India, taking my duty by the people into consideration at this hour, I have decided to stand by my people. It is the imperative duty of Hindus and Muslims to join the revolt against the Englishmen. They should work and be guided by their leaders in their towns and should take steps to restore order in the country. It is the bounden duty of all people that they should, as far as possible, copy out this Farman and display it at all important places in the towns. But before doing so, they should get themselves armed and declare war on the English. During the uprising of 1857, the British tried their best to disrupt the Hindu Muslim unity that was very apparent amongst those whom they called Baghi or rebels. Colonel Keith Young, Judge Advocate General of the Indian Army, that is the British East Indian Army, who was present with the British forces on the ridge in Delhi, regularly sent letters to his wife in the safety of Shimla. She published them later as Delhi 1857, The Siege, Assault and Capture as given in the diary and correspondence of the late Colonel Keith Young. On 29 July 1857, he wrote to her, Camp, Delhi Cantonment, Wednesday, 29 July. Hudson just now came into our tent and interrupted my writing this. He tells me that a letter has just come in from the city confirming what we had heard before of the discussions going on, and they seem likely to terminate in something serious at the festival of the Eid, that is Bakrid. The Bakrid, Eid al-Fitr and Bakrid both fell during the months of the siege of Delhi. As some of the Mohammedan fanatics have declared their fixed intention of killing a cow as customary on the day at the Jama Masjid. It is hoped that they will religiously adhere to their determination, and there is then sure to be a row between the Mohammedans and Hindus. Colonel Keith Young to his wife on 30th July writes, All is quiet in camp, and the mutineers must, I should hope, as we all believe, be quarreling amongst themselves and unable to agree to come out and attack us again. The Eid, we trust, will bring matters to a crisis with them and be the day for a grand row between the Hindus and the Mohammedans. On 2nd August, he writes, Our hopes of a grand row in the city yesterday at the Eid festival have not apparently been fulfilled. At least the only news letter received from the city alludes to nothing of the kind. The king had issued strict orders against killing cows or even goats in the city, and this is acted upon must have satisfied the Hindus, and instead of fighting amongst themselves, they all joined together to make a vigorous attack to destroy us and utterly sweep us from the face of the earth, when it was arranged that the king should perform his evening prayers in our camp. Bahadur Shah Zafar had foreseen this trouble and banned cow slaughter in the areas he nominally controlled. Now, this was nothing new. The Mughals had banned cow slaughter starting from the time of Babur. But in the Great Uprising of 1857, Professor Jaffrey cites that they found several documents in the mutiny papers in the National Archive, New Delhi, by Bahadur Shah Zafar and Pak Khan, the commander-in-chief of the Indian forces, asking the people to desist from cow slaughter and to the Kotwal to capture the cows from the houses of people who might go ahead with such sacrifices. So there are always some miscreants. There is evidence to support the fact that the police officer took these orders very seriously and thus prevented any sacrifice of cows by which there could have been trouble that Young and his colleagues were so eagerly anticipating. Bakrid passed peacefully in 1857 thanks to the wise decisions of the emperor. The fallout of the First War of Indian Independence was the well-documented policy of divide and rule adopted by the British, which tried to create disharmony between communities. The two communities fought together in the freedom struggle leading us to the independence of 1947. But the partition of India and subsequent riots and murder showed that the British did succeed to a great extent. Now, there is the proclamation of Azamgarh, in which, again, all these are documented. The Delhi University has brought out a number of books on this during the Indian History Conference, Indian History Congress. And in that, I'll show you the books in case anybody is interested. So this is a book which documents it. In this proclamation, it declares both Hindus and Muslims have been ruined by the oppression and of the treacherous English. Therefore, it is the bounden duty of all the wealthy people of India to stake their lives on the well-being for the well-being of the people of India. It talks of Muslims rallying under the flag of Muhammad and the Hindus under the flag of Mahavir. Now, Mahavir was used for Hanuman ji. It goes to say that the sacred books of Hindus and Muslims have prophesied the end of British rule after this year, 1857, and thus people should remove fear of its continuance from their minds and join our cause. There had been a prophecy that 100 years after the Battle of Plassey, the British would leave India. So the proclamation addresses zamindars, merchants, men of service, artisans, and scholars of both creeds, Hindus and Muslims, Maulvis and Pandits. This last part is very interesting as it says you are aware that the British are opposed to your religion, and as the present is a religious war, you should join us and gain the goodwill of the Creator. Otherwise, you will be considered sinners. If you will join us, you will receive mafi and land from the emperor. So this was a religious war, but a religious war in which Hindus and Muslims, high and low caste, everybody fought together. It was in the nature of an anti-colonial war. But it is important to note that Bahadur Shah was not fighting Christians, he was fighting the British East India Company. He opposed the company's paramountcy and the Englishmen as a class enjoying the highest and most lucrative offices in the state, writes S. Mehdi Hassan. And for all, since you all are students, and in case you want to read, this is one of the best books that you will find on Bahadur Shah. In fact, the European Francis Godley Quince, who wrote Urdu Persian poetry under the pen name Prasu, chronicles that Muzaffar called all the three classes of people, Musalman, Hindus, and Mujahideen, to a personal interview and taking an oath explained his object. He asked the Hindus to swear by Lord Ram and the river Ganges, and the Musalman to swear by placing a copy of the Quran on their head. Again, this is given in Bahadur Shah Zafar and the War of 1857 in Delhi. So while Ghulam Ghaus manned the cannons in the fort of Jhansi under Rani Lakshmi Bai, Raja Jai Singh of Azamgarh fought under the banner of Begum Hazrat Mahal. He was a key member of a military council and also the main spokesperson for the troops in their dealing with the court of the young British Kadal after the regent declared him the Nawab in 1857. Jai Singh too was martyred in the cause of independence. In fact, those of you who are from, who would have heard of Babu Kuan Singh, today is his death anniversary. Today he was hanged in 1858 for fighting against the British. Ghaus the gunner died defending Jhansi. Rani Lakshmi Bai had famously declared, "मैं अपनी झांसी नहीं दूंगी" to the British. Azizan Bai, the famous courtesan of Kanpur, joined the battle against the British in 1857 under the banner of Nana Sahab. There are innumerable examples of Hindu-Muslim unity, and that was seen as one of the main reasons for the revolt by the British. If there was Ahmadullah Khan, the Maulvi of Faizabad fighting the British in Awadh, there was Rautullah Ram of Haryana who was helping Bahadur Shah Zafar. And for those of you in Delhi who travel to the airport, you have to go through the Rautullah Ram road. Liaquat Ali was holding the fort in Allahabad's Khusro Bagh, while 80-year-old Kanwar Singh raised the banner of revolt in Bihar. Among the many lessons the Indian mutiny conveys to the historian. Now, this I am quoting British historian George William Forrest, who this is his introduction to the state papers soon after the end of the First War of Indian Independence. He says, among the many lessons the Indian mutiny conveys to the historian, none is of greater importance than the warning that it is possible to have a revolution in which Brahmins and Shudras, Hindus and Mohammedans could be united against us. So it was not only a war which was being fought across communities, it was also a war in which all the castes joined together. In fact, there are many examples. There's this wonderful book called Mutiny on the Margins, edited, in which there is a paper by Lata Singh where she talks, she has collected a number of Bhojpuri ditties and folk songs that were being sung by the followers of Babu Kuan Singh, who talk about, the Thobis and the Bishtis and all the castes joining together against the British. According to historian Professor Irfan Habib, it was the largest anti-colonial uprising anywhere in the world. Out of 135,000 Bengal army native soldiers, only 7,000 remained loyal to their British masters. It was the sheer scale that rattled the might of the British Empire, and they struck back with unparalleled cruelty, killing, executing, and looting all those whom the slightest shred of evidence linked to the revolt. Since it was also seen as a Mohammedan conspiracy making capital out of Hindu grievances. The brunt of the wrath was shared by the Muslims, and which is the reasons given by Sir Syed Ahmed Khan and his reasons for the mutiny of 1857, as well as why he wanted to bring back the Muslims into the mainstream by educating them in Western education, on lines of Western education, and for which he formed the Mohammedan Anglo-Oriental College. Many of the princes and princesses were either killed or died trying to escape or spend their lives in ignominy and poverty. Many innocents from every side associated with the centers of the uprising were killed, and Hindustan, as we knew it in 1857, changed forever. The emperor was tried for sedition against his own empire and exiled to Rangoon in 1858. He died there, far away from his homeland, in 1864. Thus, the Mughal Empire was replaced by the British Empire under Queen Victoria. Now, to come to Bahadur Shah Zafar, now that I've given you a background of 1857, he was crowned the emperor in 1837 at the age of 62. He was 82 at the time when the First War of Indian Independence or the uprising started. He had nothing much to do after the Treaty of 1803, as all of you would be aware. It was the British who were ruling Delhi and most of the Mughal Empire, places where the Mughal ran earlier. And Bahadur Shah spent his time, as per the Roznamcha of Bahadur Shah, which has been collated from various newspapers, he spent his time either in Shikar, writing ghazals, or visiting the shrines of Hazrat Nizamuddin Auliya and Qutub Sahib and Mehrudi. He was, as you all know, a Sufi mystic. And this mystical quality was always present in his verses. One of his very famous verses, and this is something that I like a lot, is या मुझे अफसरे शहाना बनाया होता या मेरा ताज गदाया बनाया होता. I wish you had made me the master of royals or made my crown the bowl for arms and betrayals. Now, 11th May, as I had already mentioned, the emperor was sitting in the Musamman Burj doing his wazifa, praying, and after the dawn prayers, it was 16th of Ramzan, when suddenly he saw smoke coming from the side of Salimgarh. He sent his sentries to find out the soldiers. They came back and told him that there is a group of cavalrymen who are coming from Meerut. Those cavalrymen came, gathered under the Jharoka, Zere Jharoka, and then they called out to him and said कि हम दीन और दुनिया से बिगड़ कर आए. Initially, Bahadur Shah, as I mentioned earlier, was reluctant. He said, मैं तो एक सूफी हूँ, मैं एक तकिए पर बैठा हूँ. Takiya means, a Sufi hospice or kind of a convent. He said, मैं तो एक तकिए पर बैठा हुआ, मेरे पास कुछ भी नहीं है जो मैं तुमको दे सकता हूँ, ना मेरे पास ताज है, ना मेरे पास तख्त है. And they tell him that you don't worry about all this, ये तो सब हम आपको दिलवा देंगे. And he initially tries to, call the British resident and the Khiledar and reason with them, but when they don't agree, on 12th of May, they pull out a silver throne which was lying in the Diwan-e-Khas, and they crown him the Emperor of Padshah-e-Hindustan. Now, coins are being struck in his name. On before this, the system of nazar had been stopped by the British. There was a custom that if a visitor came, including all the residents and Englishmen, anyone, whoever came to meet the emperor, had to offer a nazar to him. So this nazar was stopped by the British. Coins were no longer being struck in his name. They were now East India Company coins being struck. But after this, a coin is struck in which it says, Sirajuddin Bahadur Shah Ghazi struck gold coin as a sign of victory. 13th May, he held a darbar in Diwan-e-Khas. He remained active throughout and even rode out at the head of a procession to fight the British forces. Though due to some reasons, he never did actually face the British forces. But he rode out several times. He rode out into the city several times. All this is given in S. Mendia's book, trying to exhort the soldiers, the Indian sepoys. Because you have Indian soldiers in the British army as well as here, so I try to delineate them by saying sepoys. So the Indian sepoys of the British East India Company, who were now fighting for Bahadur Shah Zafar, he rode out many times trying to exhort them. On 14th May, a provisional government was set up. He called all the officers of all the officers belonging to various communities, various, The Amir, the Umrah, the Raja, the Rao, the Jagirdar, everybody was called, and a provisional government was set up. His son Mirza Mughal was appointed as the commander in chief of the army, and Rao Sahab of Pargana Dadri was made in charge of the commissariat and transport. Sai Mal was appointed as the commander of a battalion and asked to seize British provision. Now, one unfortunate fallout of this was that when the sepoys raised the banner of revolt in Meerut and they escaped from there, they actually 80 of their officers had been imprisoned in Meerut cantonment. So when they broke open the prison to release their officers and the subedars, the Indians, they also let out all the criminals who were locked there for petty offences. It is the same thing that happened in Delhi. And when these petty criminals came out, they attracted a lot of antisocial elements also, and there was loot, mar, and murder and mayhem in Delhi on a large scale, which actually went against the Indian sepoys. And this is something that even Emperor kept appealing against, especially the murder of innocent English, British men, women, and children on 16th of May inside the Lal Qila, which is the main reason of the revenge that was taken by the British against the Indians. Now, on 8th of June, there was the Battle of Badli Ka Sarai, in which the Indians lost and the British took control of the ridge. The ridge is very close to, it's part of the Delhi University area. And they took control of Hindu Rao's house, which is today Bada Hindu Rao Hospital. And 25th August, there was the Battle of Najafgarh, again where the Indian sepoys lost. By 8th September, the British had also captured Kutsia Bagh and Ludlow Castle and established their batteries there. 14th of September, under General Nicholson, they stormed the Kashmiri Gate and they entered. Though Nicholson was killed, the British were successful and they managed to spread out all over the city of Shahjahanabad. There was hand-to-hand fighting and the city was soon under their control. The night of 17th September, according to some, and 19th September, according to others, Bahadur Shah Zafar left the Qila. He left the Qila by the route of the river and went to the Dargah of Hazrat Nizamuddin Aulia first. He said there that he had come to hand over some relics that he had belonging to the Prophet. He had some hairs of the Prophet which were part of the Timurid legacy, and he handed them over to the Dargah. Even today, on the 12th of on Bara Wafat, that is Bara Rabiul, which is the Islamic date for the birth of the Prophet, peace be upon him, these hairs are displayed at the Dargah. So he went there, he gave that, the Khwaja Hasan Nizami's grandfather was the Sajjada Nashin at that time, and this has been related by Hasan Nizami in his book, as he heard it from his mother, that the Sajjada Nashin came and asked, Huzur, aap yahan kaise? And he says, मैं आया हूँ, मैं नहीं चाहता कि कत्लो आम हो, because the British is looking for me. They are after my blood. If I stay on in the Qila, then the whole city will be ravaged. So he leaves the Qila and comes here, though not that it helps. The city is still looted and almost everybody who was there and thought to be a rebel was killed and murdered. So he comes there, he hands over the relics to the Sajjada Nashin and says कि मैं 3 वक्त का भूखा हूँ, मैंने 3 वक्त से खाना नहीं खाया, and he's given besan की रोटी and सिरके की चटनी which he eats and then goes to the Humayun's tomb at night. In the morning, he's betrayed. His whereabouts are betrayed by a relative of his, Mirza Ilahi Baksh, who informs Major Hudson about it, and then Ilahi Baksh and Rajab Ali, again Rajab Ali was a courtier, they persuade Bahadur Shah Zafar to surrender. General Bakht Khan, who was one of the highest Indian officers in the British East India Company or Army, had also defected, and 1st of July he had joined the Indian forces in the Qila. He keeps trying to persuade Bahadur Shah Zafar that you don't give in, you come with me, we will live to fight another day. But Bahadur Shah Zafar is by then 83, he's old, he's tired, and he gives in. And he comes into, he is persuaded by Rajab Ali and Ilahi Baksh to surrender. All of you must have heard of the surrender. It's a very famous painting that has been made based on that. He surrenders. He is taken as a prisoner back to the Lal Qila, where he is put into one of the houses which had been built there for one of the princes there. He lives there as a prisoner till On 27 January 1858, his trial starts, and he is exiled for the crime of sedition. He is exiled to Rangoon, where he dies in 1862. Now, the next day, his sons and grandsons are captured by Hudson. They are killed. Now, the British troops are going through the city of Shah Jahanabad, looting houses, killing people. One of the people who is killed is Mir Panjakash. He was a very famous calligrapher, so famous that he would sit outside his house and write one word, and people who were needy would come and take it. He would give it to them. They would come and take it and sell it for a rupee in Jama Masjid. On 15th or 16th of September, he is defending his house when he is killed. Sadru Sadur, who was the chief Qazi or the Sadar of Shah Jahanabad before the fall of Delhi, was killed along with 1400 others in the mohalla of Kucha Chelan, and there were many others. All this is very beautifully described. The exodus of the people from Shah Jahanabad and their murder is described in Dastan-e-Qadar and Beg Matyansu. Here I'd like to read another verse by Zafar. किया जो कत्ल मुझे तुमने खूब काम किया कि मैं अजाब से छूटा तुम्हें सवाब हुआ. My murder rests good on you. Don't worry. You have found grace. I am away from strife. Now, the 82-year-old poet, Mughal emperor, was not only imprisoned, he was tried for sedition, sentenced to be exiled, but also deprived of pencil and pen through which he could express his anguish. He ended up scribbling ghazals with charcoal on the walls of his room. They were smuggled out, and even after he went to Rangoon, were remembered. They could exile him, but not his words or memories. One such ghazal became an anthem of the dispossessed after the British took over and was sung by wandering minstrels. In 1862, the British political agent of Bhopal sent a report to his superiors asking to ban it. I translate it for the benefit of readers who are unaware of the fact of the First War of Indian Independence and the role of Bahadur Shah Zafar in it. I'll read it. I'll read a verse in Urdu and then I'll translate it, then go on to the next. गई यक पयक जो हवा पलट नहीं दिल को मेरे करार है पर उस सितम का मैं क्या बयान मेरा गम से सीना फिगार है. The winds of fate change suddenly. My heart is inconsolable. How can I describe the pain? My chest is heavy with melancholy. ये रियाए हिंद तबाह हुई कहूँ क्या जो इन पे जफा हुई. जिसे देखा हाकिम वक्त ने कहा ये भी काबिले दार है. Indians have been ruined. One can't describe their oppression. The new rulers condemned everyone they saw worthy of the gallows. Now, the place where today you have the Gurudwara Sheesh Ganj Langar Khana was the Kotwali of the Mughals, and on that only you had there was a big chabutra attached to it, और उस कोतवाली चबूतरे के ऊपर the gallows were erected, and there are many descriptions which show that the area was surrounded by chairs were laid out on which the British men and women sat, and they watched the tamasha of the फांसी देने का जो तमाशा था वो सबने बैठ के वहाँ कुर्सियों पर देखा. People were lined up, whoever had been sentenced for the crime of rebellion या जो बगावत जिनको भी सजा दी गई थी, they were lined up and one by one brought to the gallows and hanged, and the people behind them could see the one in front of them being hanged and knew that this is now their fate. ये रियाए हिंद तबाह हुई कहूँ क्या जो इन पे जफा हुई. इसे देखा हाकिम वक्त ने कहा ये भी काबिले दार है. Indians have been ruined. One can't describe their oppression. The new rulers condemned everyone they saw worthy of the gallows, and that's almost the truth because many people were hanged. ये किसी ने जुल्म भी है सुना कि दी फांसी लोगों को बेगुना. वही कलमा गोयों के समत से अभी दिल में उनके बुखार है. Has anybody heard of such tyranny, that innocents were sent to the gallows? The rulers still bear such enmity towards those who recite the Islamic creed. As I had mentioned earlier, this was declared as a Mohammedan conspiracy taking advantage of Hinduism. ना था शहर दिल्ली ये था चमन, कहो किस तरह का था ये अमन। ना था शहर दिल्ली ये था चमन, कहो किस तरह का था यहाँ अमन। जो खिताब था वो मिटा दिया, फकत अब तो उजड़ा तैयार है। जो खिताब था वो मिटा दिया, फकत अब तो उजड़ा तैयार है। Delhi was never just a city, it was a garden of harmony. They have erased all signs of that. Now only a ruined waste remains. यही तंग हाल जो सबका है, ये करिश्मा कुदरते रब का है। यही तंग हाल जो सबका है, ये करिश्मा कुदरते रब का है। जो बहार थी सो खिजा हुई, जो खिजा थी वो अब बहार है। जो बहार थी सो खिजा हुई, जो खिजा थी अब वो बहार है। These straitened conditions that we all find ourselves in is divinely ordained. The spring has turned into the decay of autumn, while the decay has turned to spring for some. शब रोज फूल में जो तोले, शब रोज फूल में जो तुले, कहो खारे गम तो वो क्या सही। शब रोज फूल में जो तुले, कहो खारे गम तो वो क्या सही। मिले तो कैद में जब उन्हें, कहाँ गुल के बदले ये हार है। मिले तो कैद में जब उन्हें, कहाँ गुल के बदले ये हार है। Those who were weighed in flowers morn and night, how can they bear the thorns of grief? They were given shackles of imprisonment and told to embrace it as a garden of flowers. सभी ज्यादा मतमे सख्त है, तो वो कैसी गर्दिश वक्त है। ना वो ताज है, ना वो तख्त है, ना वो शाह है, न दयार है। ना वो ताज है, ना वो तख्त है, ना वो शाह है, न दयार है। Everywhere there is the lament and wails of mourning. How terrible is the turn of fate. Neither the crown, nor the throne, nor the emperor or the kingdom remains. जो सलूक करते थे और से वही अब है कितने जलील से। वो है तंग चक के जोर से, रहा तन पे उनके न तार है। Those who once reigned are now dealt humiliation. They are oppressed by the wheel of fortune. Not a shred remains on their body. ना बबाल तन पे है सर मेरा, नहीं जान जाने का डर तरा। कटे गम ही निकले जो दम मेरा, मुझे अपनी जिंदगी बार है। My head on my soldiers, my head on my body is no longer a calamity, nor is there a fear of dying. When my head is cut off, I will be at peace, for my life is an unbearable burden. क्या है गम ज़फ़र तुझे, हश्र का जो खुदा ने चाहा तो बरमला। हमें है वसीला रसूल का, वो हमारा हामी कार है। Why are you worried about doomsday Zafar? Whatever God wishes comes to pass. I am hopeful that the Prophet will be my supporter on that last day of judgment. Zafar spoke for all those who sacrificed their life in the first war of Indian independence. It is up to us to remember and honor the sacrifices. So now, if this is a very emotional poem and it always leaves me very drained. So, but anybody has any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for your talk and for reading this poetry for us and giving us so much insight into the time of 1857 and Bahadur Shah Zafar's life. I would request the audience, whoever has questions, you can unmute yourself or you can write in the chat box and we'll read it out.
Until then, I'll just show you some more books which you can read. See, this is another book which has many articles by various scholars on many aspects of the 1857 in Delhi and Awadh. I already showed you those books, and there is a very good book by Professor Amar Faruqi on Bahadur Shah Zafar, S. Mehdi Hassan. Then you have Dastan-e-Ghadar, which you can read. There is a book called Besieged by Mahmood Faruqi, which has he's translated various documents in the archives, and of course you have The Last Emperor by William Dalrymple, if you want to read about the life of Bahadur Shah Zafar. So there are many books on Bahadur Shah Zafar. The trial of Bahadur Shah Zafar has also been written about by many people.
Ma'am, I would like to ask a question since you are, you've shown us so many books. Ma'am, you have translated Dastan Gadar. I want to ask, ma'am, that while translating, there is often this opinion or this feeling that when we translate, the essence of the original text is lost, and the emotion is not there, and its essence is lost. There are others who feel that the translator adds his or her own insight and essence to the text and adds, enriches it with that. So, with your own experience of translating, what would you say about, translating, from Urdu to English? How do you feel? What is lost? What is gained? What do you think about this?
One very famous author, I'm getting his name, had talked about this translation process, which I have, adapted to my words, where I would say, it is like translating a piece of a rag played on the sitar to a concerto, say played on the piano. So you do lose, of course, some essence of it, but you gain something more. And as far as I'm concerned, I have followed many Urdu scholars, many translators do that. Wherever I felt that certain muhavras or certain words which are untranslatable, I kept them in Urdu itself and tried to explain it at the bottom. Like in this Dastan-e-Qadar, there is this phrase, Suraj Savaneze Partha. Now, this is a Quranic allusion to the fact that on the day of judgment, the sun will be just above our heads. Savaneza, Neza is a spear. Savaneza means a neza and a quarter, so it will be just above our heads. Now, if I would say that the sun would be, a spear and a quarter above us, it is difficult to understand. So I just kept that and explained that this is an allusion to a Quranic prophecy, that this is what is going to happen on the day of judgment. Words like uff, words like, gora, it's difficult to translate, but I've tried to translate, I've tried to keep, even in City of My Heart, wherever it was not possible to translate, I have kept the Urdu words and translated below. So definitely some essence has to be lost, and that is why it is very essential that the person who's translating understand the nuances of the source. The allusions that are being referred to. Now, say in this जैसे इसमें है The City of My Heart, there's this book Basme Aakhir, which I have translated, in which they are talking of the girls dressing up. Now the girls are dressing up, those clothes, many of them, have come back today. The pajamas, the Kalidar pajamas that the queen wore, Zinat Mahal, or the girls wore, all of you are wearing as palazzos today. And the writer talks, Munshi Faizuddin, he writes, he said कि कुछ लड़कियां राधा नगरी में तैयार थी. Now, what is Radha Nagari? So I, realized that he's talking of lehengas, because Radha ji ki tasveerein jo hoti hai, wo lehenge mein hoti hai. So he was talking of lehengas, that some of the girls are not wearing that, they're wearing lehengas. So the जो उसमें जेवर था, जो उसमें खाना था, दास्तान गदर में बहुत से ऐसे illusions हैं कि he is newly married, Zahir Dehelvi, when he's talking about the Basha. So there are many illusions which may not be understandable by a Western audience. So I have tried to keep that in fact mind also, that I am not translating it only for Indians, I'm translating it for a global audience. So I have to explain everything that is written there. So wherever possible, and amongst you all also, if anybody would go on to become a translator, or even if you're writing, and you're writing something historical, where the word you feel is untranslatable, keep the original, because that keeps the essence, and then you give an explanation to it. Dastan-e-Qadar I have given a lot of notes. There are a lot of footnotes. I think there are 40-50 pages of just footnotes where I've tried to explain everything. Same in City of My Heart, where I have tried to explain the food and the jewelry that were being used there. Because many of the jewelry, of course, I've seen, I've inherited some of them also. अब वो आजकल मिलती नहीं है उस तरह की ज्वेलरी, या जैसे कि कपड़े हैं, खाना है, वो सब खाने हम लोगों को कहाँ अब ये सब मिलते हैं. So I've tried to research and explain everything possible.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for explaining it to me so nicely. And Aditi has a question. So, Aditi, you can go ahead and then we'll take Priyanka ma'am's question.
Sure. Am I audible?
Yes, Aditi.
Okay. So, ma'am, like you mentioned that Zafar, that Bahadur Zafar says that मेरे पास ताकत नहीं है and the power. But we also see that people like Kaur Singh and other people like many landlords or even common people were joining the 1857 revolt. So do we see that there's role of power and authority in it, or is it just like normal thing?
Because as I read out that Professor Irfan Habib says it was one of the largest anti-colonial movements. So it wasn't, uprising by only the king or the zamindars or the nobles. Everybody was joining it. I don't have it here with me, but you'll find an article of mine online where I have quoted the folk songs that are being sung. I'll have to look it up at somewhere else. The folk songs that are being sung by the people of Bihar, the region where Kunwar Singh is going against the British. There are so many Bhojpuri songs. You have all these. ये बुंदेलखंडी आपके पास बहुत सारे गाने हैं जो बाद में they were used to memorialize Lakshmi Bai. But the song that I'm talking of, which are given in the mutiny in the margins, are which were being sung at that time to exhort the troops who are fighting the British. क्योंकि गानों से स्लोगन से they are a very good way of increasing people's morale.
Thank you so much for sharing.
You can ask a question.
I think Anushka has a question.
Okay.
Anushka has a question. I'll ask after.
Okay. Anushka, yes, please go ahead.
Thank you, Priyanka ma'am. Good afternoon, Rana ma'am. Thank you so much for your very insightful words. Ma'am, we learned so much about something that Aditi also talked about on how Bahadur Shah Zafar's poems reflect his powerlessness in matters of the state, and this is something that you also talked about sometime earlier when you said that the power of the last two Mughal rulers is restricted from Delhi to Palam and sometimes to only the Red Fort. So, ma'am, how can we assess the overall situation of the Mughal Empire towards the end by only taking Bahadur Shah Zafar's poems as primary sources? What is their relative strength as primary sources in order to understand the situation of the Mughal Empire?
That this was a Mughal emperor who was steeped in Sufi mysticism. Because and that that very popular saying in Sultanate Shah Alam as Dilli ta Palam, it was actually not for Shah Alam, the Mughal emperor, but for Shah Alam, who was a Lodi ruler. So this was, it just fitted into the Shah Alam's context also. So Shah Alam is the second is the one who signs the treaty with the British in 1803, and by doing that he agrees to become their pensioner, and he's given this pension. Of course, at the time of the Battle of Buxar, it's 26 lakhs, and later on, by the time Bahadur Shah Zafar is there, he gets 1,26,000, out of which he is supporting a big, huge fort, as well as almost 3,000 people living inside it. Each and every person, royal got pension from him, a stipend. किसी को 10 रुपए मिल रहा है, किसी को 5 रुपए मिल रहा है, किसी को 100 मिल रहा है, according to their ranks. But all of them were given a stipend, and he even sent a stipend to Lucknow, where part of the family was living in Lucknow also. So there was hardly any money with them, and he had absolutely no power, not even within the Red Fort. Within the Red Fort, there was the Kiledar. So only within his family is the place where he has power. जब ये सिपाही आते भी हैं अगर मई में, तो ये किलेदार को बुलाते हैं. Captain Douglas was the किलेदार, and then he also calls the resident and it tells them कि देखिए क्या हो रहा है. And he keeps telling them, he said देखिए मजहबी बातें, because they had said ना कि हम दुनिया से बिगड़ के आए हैं because of the cartridges. He says मजहबी बातों को आप इतना हल्के से मत लीजिए. They should be addressed immediately because they have the power to confligate the whole empire. So he had nothing much. So if we take his poems as primary source, all we can understand is that this is somebody who was steeped in mysticism. He talked of a lot of romance, but this romance is ishq-e-haqiqi, which is a Sufi's aspiration to be for a union with God.
Can I just add to this? Just trying to figure out what is his imagery among the populace. I'm so sorry, Priyanka, it was your turn, but I thought this question was connected. What was his imagery amongst the populace of the time? Of course, as you've said, that he's just confined to the Qila or to his house, but there is a whole attempt to create a kind of banner of revolt in his name. So how is he being seen around by people outside? I mean, I'm talking the populace per se, not just a few commanders.
This is, of course, administratively and officially that he has no power. But as I said, when the soldiers come, and he says कि मैं तो बिल्कुल एक फकीर हूँ, यहाँ तकिए पे बैठा हुआ हूँ, मेरे पास कुछ नहीं है. And they remind him, they say कि even today, when the munadi जो होती है, जो proclamation फिरता है, that when it is read, it is always said, खल्क खुदा का, it's the Lord's creation, मुल्क बादशाह का, हुकुम कंपनी का. So Mulk Basha Ka is something that was being said even under the British in May 1857 also they're saying Mulk Basha Ka. And these soldiers who revolted and the others who joined in as far away as Bihar, they all knew that we need a central figure of authority and there's nobody better than the Mughal emperor. जैसे कहते हैं ना कि हाथी मरा हुआ भी 1.25 लाख का होता है. Even though he had no powers left, his name was enough to inspire confidence amongst the people. And जो ordinary लोग थे, सबको तो नहीं मालूम होगा कि भाई इनका क्या arrangement हो गया है British Empire से या क्या pension आ रही है. For them, the Mughal emperor was still the Mughal emperor. There is a story of Jahangir. It's been documented that he was very sick, and there was he had to go कहीं. मैं exactly भूल रही हूँ because I hadn't studied this when I was in college. When he goes on a litter onto the battlefield, he's that weak. He can't ride, he can't sit on an elephant or a horse. And just his presence is enough to remind people that the Mughal emperor himself has come and they win the battle. So inki jo aura thi, their presence, just the fact that he is there was enough to unite everybody under his banner. And also he was very, very loved by the people of Shahjahanabad and of Delhi. And that is something कि जो बार जितने भी आप देखिए उसमें जितने भी है अब ये फुलवालों की सैर ही है अगर even in 1857 the फुलवालों की सैर was held amongst all the fighting and the kind of inspiration that he gave people कि भाई आप अगर दरगाह जा रहे हैं तो आप मंदिर भी जा रहे हैं और अगर आप मंदिर नहीं गए nowadays when the फुलवालों की सैर takes place the dargah is visited, the chadar is offered on Thursday and the pankha in the mandir on Friday. But under the Mughals, it was the other way around. पंखा जो था वो थर्सडे को जाता था और चादर फ्राइडे को जाती थी. तो अगर वो पंखा देने नहीं गए तो वो चादर देने भी नहीं जाते थे. And this has been recorded by Faratullah Beg in Phulwalon ki Sair, where he is again talking of contemporary. He is taken it from some newspaper Roznamcha. So and
his poetry was well known around. Did it create some kind of a binding, yes. Like a binding agent? Because he's basically known as a shair or somebody who writes
ghazals. He wrote Punjabi poetry. He wrote in Hindvi under the Tahallus of Shauq. वो गाना है ना बहुत मशहूर है गाना गाया जाता है लोग कहते हैं तो तमिल खुसरो का. It is actually बहादुर शाह जफर झूला किन्ने डाला रे अमरिया.
Okay.
That is why the last time Shauq rang saiyan. So Shauq was his Tahallus.
Okay.
And Amraiya, all the references in that song are actually Amraiya was a mango orchard next to in Mehroli, which is where the Phulwalon ki Sair, a lot of entertainment and picnicking would be done. So he was connected in many ways through his verses, through his ये जो अपना दरबार भी करते थे उसमें भी तो लोग आते थे. अब दरबार में कुछ वो जैसे वो फेस्टिवल ही सेलिब्रेट हो रहे हैं, राखी सेलिब्रेट हो रही है, होली, दिवाली, ईद, बकरीद, नवरोज, ये सब सेलिब्रेट होता था किले के अंदर. किले के नीचे जो अब जहाँ पे MG रोड है वहाँ पे there used to be the यमुना and the रेती, उसके ऊपर तैराकी के कॉम्पिटिशंस हो रहे हैं, होली हो रही है, दिवाली के वो जो अब कमला मार्केट है दिल्ली स्टेशन के पास, वहाँ पे एक तालाब था, शाहजी का तालाब कहलाता था. दिवाली के ऊपर वहाँ पे नौका चलती थी and somebody would male actor would act as Ramji and Sitaji and Lakshmanji, and then they would come, or वो का आती थी, और वो like the ceremonial this thing for Diwali. All this was enacted. Sawari chalti thi. The first Ram Leela committee was established under Bahadur Shah Zafar. So there was a great connect with him between all his the same उनके subjects थे, whether they were Hindus or Muslims. Even the Christians, सबके साथ उनका बहुत connect था. This is something which I talk of so much in my books and in my I've given discussions or conversations. जैन मंदिर देखने चाहिए लोगों को. जो दिल्ली के शाहजहानाबाद के जैन मंदिर हैं, जो अकबर शाह के जमाने में बने हैं, those are the most beautiful monuments today in Delhi.
This is right on the before you enter Chandni Chowk, जो साइड में जो बने हुए हैं.
वो एक है, that is that लाल दिगंबर.
लाल वाली, हाँ जी, दिगंबर.
धर्मपुरा में जाइए. आप धर्मपुरा में जाके देखिए, there are 6 very very beautiful Jain mandirs in Delhi, in Shahjahanabad itself, made at that time. In fact, I have documented 7 of them in my book, The Shahjahanabad, The Living City of Delhi. And I've made a video of it also, which is on my YouTube channel called Rana Safvi. आप देखिए कभी उसको. मैंने उसमें तस्वीरें डाली. इतनी खूबसूरत और कोई चीज नहीं है दिल्ली में. इतनी खूबसूरत जैन मंदिर है. तो ये जो था ना, एक कनेक्ट था इनका. तभी तो सारे के सारे जो है इनकी मदद को आए, जो सारे इनकी मतलब they were willing to all fight under his banner. और आप देखिए, जब बैनर के नीचे लड़ भी रहे हैं, तो एक कोई बैनर नहीं है. There are 2 banners, one banner for the Muslims and one for the Hindus. के आप अपने अपने बैनर के नीचे लड़िए. And he tells them this is a religious fight against people who have entered a country, foreigners. जब मौलवी बाकर जो थे, जो अखबार निकालते थे, दिल्ली उर्दू अखबार, उसमें he on 6th of July, I think, I'm forgetting the date. Again, I've written about it a lot, so you'll find it all online. Just before one of these festivals, वो लोग जो है, there are suddenly pamphlets start appearing on Jama Masjid, where it talks about, it says कि मतलब हिंदू और मुसलमान तो traditionally, they are not, they are enemies of each other, and why are you fighting against have you joined forces with them to fight against Christians who are Ahle Kitab? Because हमारे हिसाब से according to the Muslims, the Bible is part of the revealed books. तो immediately वो pamphlet रातों रात उतार दिए जाते हैं उस पे से, and the next day मौलवी बाकर takes out an editorial in which he says कि हिंदू और मुसलमान यहाँ 1000 साल से साथ रह रहे हैं, हम अहले वतन हैं और हम एक फिरंगी फोर्स के खिलाफ लड़ रहे हैं. And Maulvi Bakar is shot dead on 16th of September as soon as the British forces enter by General Hudson. So there is this kind. ये वाली जो history है, because 1857 हुआ. See, history is always written by the victors. ये तो सारे आप अगर रिच के ऊपर जाइए, जो म्यूटनी मेमोरियल है, उस पे देखिए ना, they've given a timeline of the Ghadar, which what they call mutiny, जिसको कह रहे हैं. उसमें mutiny में नीचे लिखा हुआ है 20th को the city is emptied of the enemy. और फिर उसके बाद 1967 में एक फंक्शन हुआ था, in which the mutiny memorial was renamed Fatehgarh and then Ajitgarh. तो उसमें वहाँ पे वहीं पे नीचे वो लिखा हुआ है कि those who are referred to as enemy were actually the patriots. तो अब आप शहर से बाहर निकाल दिए गए, और रनिंग फ्रॉम पिलर टू पोस्ट. तो कितने मर गए, कितने बचे. अगेन दास्तान गदर, for many the best part of the book is the flight of Zahir Dehelvi and others from Delhi, कि कहाँ कैसे बचते बचाते पहुंचते हैं. फिर 1864 में, just before the darbar is to be held, they are given a general amnesty and allowed to come back. And जब ये वापस आते हैं, तो फिर अब वही है ना कि आदमी जो अपनी जिंदगी they are trying to cope with and rebuild their lives. British are firmly in power now. They are not going to be going against them. तो ये सारी histories जो है ना, अब ये उर्दू अकाउंट्स में से निकाल के ट्रांसलेट हो रही हैं. People are talking about them. And as I said, this book, जैसे ये मेहंदी हसन की बुक है, अमर फारूकी की बुक है, these are very good for reconstructing the city of my heart is a social history. It's by 3 people who talk about the life as it was. जब वो बात कर रहे हैं ना, there is this एक किताब है दिल्ली का आखिरी दीदार, in which there is this old lady Gayi Begum, who was a Mughlani or an attendant in the court of Bahadur Shah Zafar. And she says कि हम सब इतने प्यार से रहा करते थे, अब बात बात में लड़ाई होती है और लट्ठम लट्ठा हो जाती है हम लोग. And she talks of Hindu Muslim Bharat Milan. So all these things are there which are now, and I see from here that I've overshot the time. And you've got.
I know. I think you can carry on, and we can remain glued. But I believe Priyanka has another question before Anushka takes over. Yeah.
I am ready to answer, but you have Mr. Krishna coming, I think, and I'm sure everybody must be waiting for him.
Ma'am, I have a very small question. It's more of a query. I think there is apparently a holy shirt which belonged to Bahadur Shah Zafar, which was taken during 1857. And I mean, what is the authenticity to that story? It is said to have been. Yeah.
That वो जो calligraphic shirts होती हैं, the shirt that was there in the Red Fort Museum, it's actually not Bahadur shirt. It is a Sultanate period shirt, and it's been there are 3 of such shirts. One is in some museum in England, and one is in the Met Museum. And the one in the Met Museum, I think you can check online. उसपे पूरी कुरान शरीफ लिखी हुई होती है that it was to be worn under the armor as a kind of a taviz amulet.
Thank you, ma'am. Anushka?
Yes, ma'am.
That's all. That's my question.
Okay, ma'am. That was your question. Okay, thank you, ma'am, for asking, and thank you, Rana, ma'am, for such a wonderful talk, for taking us back in time and telling us so much, because this is something we do in our syllabus, but is relevant otherwise also. Thank you so much for the talk and for answering all of our questions. I would now like to request Gulfisha to please propose the vote of thanks.
देखो तुम लोग हमारा मुस्तकबिल हो, हम तो माजी हैं. So it is important that there is a connect between the Mazi and the Mustaqbal. So I'm very happy. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for such a wonderful session. We enjoyed every bit of it, and personally, I was so looking forward to this. We have come to an end of this session. I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to ma'am for gracing today's event and sharing with us such great things. Thank you, ma'am, for being with us today and making it so enjoyable. I'm sure all of us had a fun afternoon with you. Thank you, everybody, for joining in and being such